On December 2, 2001, the largest energy company in America filed for bankruptcy. 20,000 employees arrived for work that morning. By afternoon, they had nothing left. 15,000 had put their entire retirement savings into company stock. The stock was now worth pennies. $74 billion had vanished. Not a market crash, not a disaster. It was stolen deliberately. The men who did it had already sold their shares and moved the money. They walked away rich. This is Enron, named the most innovative company in America 6 consecutive years. Every number was a lie. Every award, every earnings report, every promise made to every employee. By the time America found out, the money was gone, and the lawyers were already in place. 22 people would be convicted. The families destroyed by this fraud numbered in the tens of thousands. How did the entire financial system miss this for over a decade? The answer will make you furious.
Before the collapse, Enron was the 7th largest corporation in America. Not a startup, not a small company. It started in 1985, a merger of 2 pipeline companies. Kenneth Lay was put in charge. Lay's vision was bigger than pipelines. He would trade energy the way Wall Street traded stocks. In 1990, Lay hired Jeffrey Skilling. Skilling had a different vision. Forget the pipelines. Trade everything. Under Skilling, Enron became a trading machine. Coal, steel, broadband, weather derivatives, anything that could be sold. The revenues were staggering. $13 billion in 1996, $100 billion by the year 2000. Fortune magazine named Enron the most innovative company in America, then again 6 consecutive years in a row. In August 2000, a single Enron share hit $90.75. Investors were flooding in. Employees were pressured to put retirement savings into company stock. Managers called it the safest investment possible. Carol Elkin worked for Enron 17 years. She put $360,000 into company stock. She was not alone. Thousands did the same. Enron had built a culture of absolute belief in itself. Skilling called it the culture of performance. Top performers were celebrated. The weak were fired publicly in front of colleagues. Every year, Enron ranked its full workforce. The bottom 15% were automatically terminated, rank or leave. The culture was brutal and intoxicating. The survivors felt invincible. The money and the private jets were real. Enron's platform processed $2.5 billion in transactions every single day. It dominated every market it entered.
In California, Enron traders engineered deliberate blackouts, creating artificial shortages to drive electricity prices up. Hundreds of thousands lost power. Californians paid billions in inflated prices. Traders nicknamed their victims Grandma Millie. On those tapes, traders laughed about the money they were stealing. Nobody in government stopped them because the numbers looked perfect. The stock kept climbing, the bonuses kept growing, and Enron had a secret weapon. That weapon was Andrew Fastow. In 1998, he became CFO. 36 years old and dangerously clever. Fastow created hundreds of shell companies: LJM, Raptor, Chuco, named after a Star Wars character. These shells had one purpose: absorb Enron's losses. Debt vanished into Fastow's creations instead of appearing on the books. Mark-to-market accounting let Enron book projected profits the day a deal was signed, even if it never earned a dollar. A worthless deal could appear as worth $500 million. Nobody outside the company could verify the math. Arthur Andersen was Enron's auditing firm, paid millions yearly. one of the 5 biggest accounting firms in the world. They approved every report, every quarter, every year, for years. Either they missed it or chose not to look. In 2001, a Fortune journalist named Bethany McLean asked the question that began Enron's unraveling. How exactly does Enron make its money? Nobody at Enron could answer. Wall Street analysts could not answer. The stock was at $75. Nobody had ever asked before. Inside Enron, VP Sharon Watkins had already asked the same question. What she found terrified her. In August 2001, Watkins wrote directly to Lay, warning Enron could implode. Lay gave the letter to his lawyers. The lawyers advised Lay not to investigate. Investigating would only confirm what Watkins found. Better not to know. So Lay did nothing. He went on television and told employees to buy more stock. Everything was fine. While telling employees to buy, Lay was quietly selling tens of millions of his own shares every week. Skilling had already seen the collapse coming. In August 2001, he suddenly resigned with no explanation. 6 other executives had quietly left. Inside Enron, the trading floors stayed busy. Employees still believed. The culture demanded confidence. Doubt meant termination. On October 16th, Enron announced a $600 million quarterly loss and a $1 billion shareholder write-down. The stock began to fall. $33, $20, $15. The SEC opened an investigation. On November 8th, Enron admitted it had inflated income by nearly $600 million since 1997. $500 million of profit invented, reported, believed by everyone, checked by no one, for 4 straight years. Dynegy offered $8 billion to rescue Enron. The deal collapsed when auditors found $10 billion in hidden debt. Enron stock closed at 26 cents on November 30th, from $90 in 16 months. Bankruptcy came 24 days later, December 2nd, 2001. Enron filed for bankruptcy, the largest in American history at that time. $63 billion in assets gone. The next morning, security guards turned employees away at locked doors. No warning, no severance, no pension, nothing. 4,000 jobs gone that morning. 15,000 more would follow. Arthur Andersen immediately began shredding Enron documents. Federal investigators arrived at Arthur Andersen to find entire ruins of shredded Enron records, literally tons of paper destroyed. Across Houston, families were opening retirement statements. The balance read 0. Accounts frozen. The money was gone. Carol Elkin lost her entire $360,000 pension, age 51. She went back to waitressing. Thomas White worked the Enron Power Division 30 years. His pension was $300,000. After the collapse, $12,000. A widow named Mary Wyatt inherited her husband's Enron shares. She refused every offer to sell. She believed. She lost everything. These were not wealthy investors. These were nurses, teachers, pipeline workers, people who built the company that destroyed them. On January 25, 2002, former Vice Chairman Clifford Baxter was found dead in his car in Sugar Land, Texas. Baxter was scheduled to testify before Congress. He left a suicide note. He knew what was coming and could not face it. Congressional hearings began in February 2002. Senator after senator demanded answers. Lay took the fifth. Fastow refused to testify. Lay's lawyers argued he was a victim, deceived by subordinates, that he knew not the true state of the finances. The investigation found otherwise. Email trails showed Lay was warned repeatedly. Internal memos, the Watkins letter, reports from his own risk team. Fastow pleaded a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy. His wife also served prison time. Fastow testified that Skilling knew everything. The shell companies were built with Skilling's approval. He signed off on every scheme. Between late 2000 and his resignation, Skilling sold nearly $60 million of his own Enron shares, while employees were buying. Enron workers were legally blocked from selling their retirement shares during a transition period. Hands tied while executives cashed out. Employees watched their life savings evaporate in real time, while the men who caused the disaster moved personal wealth to safety. California's human cost was still being counted. Hospitals had run on backup generators during Enron's engineered energy blackouts. Small businesses across California closed permanently because they couldn't afford Enron's artificially inflated energy prices. The California energy crisis cost the state $40 billion. Governor Gray Davis called it economic terrorism. The tapes confirmed it. On the recordings, Betrader described the strategy plainly. They were taking money from California. He laughed as he said it. 85,000 Arthur Andersen employees lost their jobs when the firm surrendered its accounting license after its obstruction conviction. None of those 85,000 had anything to do with Enron. They were collateral damage in a crime they did not commit. Enron's collapse hit pension funds of police departments, teachers' unions, and municipal workers across America who held Enron stock. University endowments lost hundreds of millions. Charitable foundations lost reserves. One fraud's damage reached every corner of American civic life. The trial of Lay and Skilling opened January 30th, 2006, the most consequential white-collar trial in American history. The defense argued both men were victims of subordinates who deceived them, that the culture operated beyond their knowledge. The prosecution played recordings, showed emails, and called 30 witnesses, including Fastow, who described briefing both Lay and Skilling directly. May 25, 2006, Skilling found guilty on 19 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and insider trading, sentenced to 24 years. Kenneth Lay was convicted on all 6 fraud counts. Before sentencing, he died of a heart attack on July 5, 2006. Because Lay died before sentencing, his convictions were vacated. Under American law, a conviction dies with the defendant. He died innocent. The victims watched with disbelief. The man who told them to buy while secretly selling died without a single day in prison.
Skilling went to prison. Fastow served 6 years, 22 convictions in total. But the employees received nothing. Workers filed a class action lawsuit. After years of litigation, they settled. Total recovery for lost pensions, $85 million. $85 million split among employees who lost over $2 billion in pension value, roughly 4 cents on every dollar. Carol Elkin eventually received a check for $11,000. She was 60 years old by the time it arrived. The Enron scandal produced one significant reform, the 2002 Sarbanes-Oxley Act, requiring CEOs to personally certify financial statements. Under Sarbanes-Oxley, signing a false financial report became criminal, up to 20 years in prison.
the biggest reform since the 1930s. But laws on paper did not restore what was lost: the retirements, the careers, the 20 years of savings taken from them. In 2013, a judge reduced his sentence by over 10 years after Skilling forfeited $42 million for victims. February 21, 2019, Jeffrey Skilling walked out of federal prison in Alabama. 12 years served, reportedly worth millions. The employees he destroyed had no such exit. Those 12 years had been spent working second jobs, delaying retirement, rebuilding from zero. Fastow reinvented himself as a corporate ethics speaker. He now charges fees to address business school students about the dangers of greed. He tells audiences he regrets everything, that ambition overrode his ethics. Tickets to hear him speak cost $200. California electricity customers victimized by Enron's manipulation eventually received partial refunds. Total recovered, $1.7 billion. $1.7 billion sounds large until you know Enron took $40 billion from California, 5 cents on the dollar.
This scandal raised one question markets never fully answered. How does a company report $100 billion when nothing is real? The answer: the systems designed to catch fraud were compromised by the same money funding the fraud. Auditors paid by Enron. Moody's and Standard & Poor's rated Enron investment grade until 4 days before the bankruptcy. 4 days after 16 years of lies. Enron was not a rogue in a clean system. It was built by a system that rewarded short-term results and protected the powerful. After Enron came WorldCom, Tyco, HealthSouth. The same playbook, the same tricks, the same executives selling while employees bought. Enron didn't teach the system a lesson. It provided a template. 7 years later, fake numbers crashed the entire world economy. Enron survivors formed support groups. They met in church halls across Houston. They helped each other find jobs and paths forward. Some rebuilt. Some never recovered. Some still work minimum wage jobs in their 70s. The Enron building still stands in Houston. A different company uses it now. The spinning E logo is gone. In 2024, years after the bankruptcy, a new company announced it was relaunching under the Enron name to trade clean energy. Thousands of former employees responded online. They remembered what that name had cost them. A name built on lies should stay buried. Enron is not the story of one corrupt company. It is what happens when an entire system stops asking questions. Every regulator who looked away, every auditor who signed off, every executive who sold shares while employees bought, all chose the lie. $74 billion, 20,000 jobs, 15,000 pensions, 1 suicide, 22 convictions. A system that learned almost nothing. That is Enron.